Hei kaikille, mä oon Katja Puolakka ja mä toimin Barral Instituutin Finlandin maajohtajana. Ja tänään keskitytään Barral Instituutin puoleen. Mulla on haastateltavana kollega Tanskasta, Kåre Nielsen, joka toimii siellä Tanskan Barral Instituutin maajohtajana ja hän on myös osteopaatti sekä Barral Instituutin kansainvälinen opettaja. Barral Instituutti tietää enemmän viskeraalimanipulaatiosta, mutta meillä on nyt tulossa Suomeen uutuutena myös nivelalueiden manuaaliseen käsittelyyn liittyvät kurssit. Ja tänään meidän on tarkoitus vähän Kåre esittelee meille hieman näitä nivelalueiden manuaaliseen käsittelyyn liittyviä kursseja. Hi Kåre, it's nice to see you.
Hello, nice to see you too, Katja.
So I was just explaining shortly that we are bringing the new courses into Finland, and today we're gonna just give a little introduction what the courses are about. But before we start, can you, with a couple of sentences, tell a little bit about yourself and your background?
For sure, yes. I'm a physiotherapist originally, and then I also studied to be an osteopath. And after being graduating from the osteopathic school, I started taking class after class after class, and found my way to the Barral Institute, and I've taken every class that there is. And then I started to repeat and to assist and eventually to teach. So for me, it's about it's a road of learning, and I step to another level to learn things even better. So I'm a bit of a quest to become as good as I can be with manual therapy. I enjoy that very much, and I also enjoy very much to teach. And I've had the honor to come to Helsinki several times to teach there. So I look forward to the next time.
You have been teaching mainly the visual manipulation here, and now the next one will be the one of the new Manual Articular Approach classes. So can you tell a little bit what those classes are about?
Yes, normally think about joint health in treating the joint itself. So we talk about manipulation and mobilization, muscle energy techniques. But these classes, new Manual Articular Approach, is coming a little bit further around. It's not treating the joint surface itself, but more maybe the health of the joint in looking at the information stage of the neural component to it, or the vascular part, how the drainage comes away from the joint, or how the arterial system supplies the knee or the hip in this case, or even just the ligaments and the capsule and the musculature around each of these joints. So it's a little bit coming more around and looking at it in a broader perspective than just the joint surface.
And there's 3 classes in the whole curriculum of these classes. Yeah.
We have one with the spine and the pelvis that looks a lot around the health of the spine, and then we have the lower and the upper extremity. And by now, if you have taken all these classes, also there is an advanced class that alaraajan is teaching.
And we're going to start with the lower extremity. Can you tell what we're going to learn in that class?
Well, it's basically an introduction to the concept, and then the 3 different bigger joints of the lower leg of the leg, so the hip and the knee and the ankle, and how we can influence them in different ways. So depending on which of the structures, and there's certain preferences of structures that we would like to work with, but it's coming around them, like I said at the beginning, and not just or definitely not the joint surface in these classes.
So how much force do we use with these techniques? Are they more like the Barral techniques in general?
Yes, it's based in the same concept and ideas that we see in other visual manipulation, neural manipulation classes. But still use the listening as a guide to find where we are going. In the leg, we don't have motility like we do have with the organs, but we do have listening and mobility tests. So for each of the areas, for the whole leg, we use the local listening. And then we find the specific areas, let's say the knee, we'll go to a differential listening of the knee and mobility testing of the knee. So we can find, is it on the outside or the inside of the knee? Or is it the anterior, the posterior, or lateral medial chamber of the knee? So in that case, we can be very, very specific in what we do. And once we have defined which kind of structure that we are dealing with, we can be extremely soft and specific with that structure.
Who will benefit as a practitioner from this class? Like, who do you recommend to take this one? And who can participate? Like, what are the prereqs? Do they need to do some visual manipulation first, or can they just come for the class?
This is actually a startup class. So you can be a manual therapist of any kind and have access to this. So it's good to have a basic understanding of the anatomy and physiology, of course. So if you're a PT or a DO or craniosacral therapist, if you have some prior basic understanding, it's very helpful. But it's a startup class, so you don't have a lot of prereq for this one.
And you promised to introduce some techniques, or go a bit more into the, I guess, knee joint.
Yeah. So if Katja, if you can put on the PowerPoint, I gave a few slides for you. When you can put that on, I can explain a little bit about the meniscs. Is a big section, the menisc. And as you can see here now, coming to this PowerPoint is part of my presentation for the knee. We're looking here at the meniscal motion, and you can see here that if you do flexion or extension, the menisc now will follow the tibia. So whatever the tibia does, the menisc will follow. So as an example, if you're sitting down and the menisc is held back, it will be stuck in the back, so to speak, with the tibia, and you can have like a locked knee if there's some of the ligaments in the back of the knees holding onto the menisc. Now, it's a different story if it's rotation of the knee, then the menisc follows the femur. So we're looking into some of the biomechanics of the knee, and we're seeing how we can actually test the knee in the different motions, and then how we can influence also the menisc motion. So we can go to the next slide. So the menisc have an outer innervation and blood supply. So you can see the wedge in the middle image, where the white is where there's really no innervation and blood supply, but more on the lateral side in this case, or the outer side of the menisc. You can see on the right side of the image the fiber orientation within the menisc. We have circular and vertical and horizontal fibers, which gives you an opportunity to keep the ball inside this surface, the ball meaning the femoral condyle. If you move to the next slide. This image and drawing on the right side, it shows you a lot of the ligaments around the knee. So you can see there's the tibia plateau, and you can see the two meniscs laying on top of the plateau and the patella in the front. So there's ligaments from patella. There's ligaments in the front of the two meniscs together. There's ligaments on the medial side, the MCL, that has direct attachment to the medial menisc. On the lateral side, you have the LCL that does not have a direct contact. On the posterior side, with the red markings, you have the popliteus muscle, and on the medial side, you have semimembranosus having direct contact towards the menisc. So a lot of ligaments around the joint have contact to the menisc and can have restrictive forces to it. So it's very helpful to look around the knee to help the inside of the knee. Go on to the next one. Here's a bit of an image of all the ligaments in the back of the knee on the right side. So you can see the semimembranosus coming down on the medial side, and it's turning to go onto an oblique ligament and also a direct tendon and a reflective tendon onto the side. And on the lateral side, all the way to the right, you can see small ligaments coming from the fibula head up around the popliteus muscle that is in the midsection underneath the knee. So a lot of ligamentous structures that have contact to the menisc. It's illustrated a little bit on the left side, where you can see the semimembranosus pulling onto the menisc itself. Let's move on to the next slide. Here's a menisc test. So you can see the index fingers coming over the tibia plateau and touching onto the anterior part of the menisc. Behind the knee, the thumbs also go towards the menisc through the posterior capsule to feel the motion of the menisc as you will then move the knee in flexion and extension. And move to the next slide. So I took an example with the MCL. This shows you very nicely in the image below on the right side, also actually the upper one, which is a drawing of the same thing. The MCL, the medial collateral ligament, has one broad band, but also two smaller ones, one from the femoral condyle going to the menisc and one from the tibia going to the menisc. So this means there's a direct contact to the menisc, and the MCL will then have an influence on the motion of the menisc. Can you go on to the next slide? Here we're testing the medial collateral ligament. We're palpating and finding the structure. On to the next slide. So really illustrated, this is the two attachment points above and below the knee. And the fingers then on the lower image addressing the entirety of the large band of the MCL. Move on to the next slide. So here we're going from the femur or the tibia to connect into the menisc. So we're going into the joint line with one finger, and the other one is on the external part. So we have a direct response to the medial menisc in this case. Move on to the next slide. Yeah, so that was it. I wanted to talk about the MCL, so we skipped the last one. You can come out of the presentation. So just a little preview, just a little idea of the amount of anatomy that is behind this and the specificity that we will talk about to have an influence on this case, the menisc. So it's a very exciting class, I think, to have such amazing effect onto the menisc for this case, but of course also on the other parts of each of the joints. So it'll be great to see you come to this class. I will look forward to teaching in Helsinki.
Yes, thank you for coming to teach, and thank you for explaining about the little bit about the course. And as we could see from the slides, the presentation, that there will be, like always, the anatomy and the theory, and then a lot of time to practice as well, and hands-on. And I know you have been my teacher in the visual manipulation classes, so I know that you are always wanting to make sure that we all get the techniques and are able to start to use those the next day right after the class. So I'm also sure that we are going to have extremely informative and insightful 3 days soon. So thank
Excellent.
you for sharing with us.
You're most welcome. I look forward to August.
Thank you. Eli tässä oli nyt pieni esittely tästä meidän tulevasta alaraajan nivelalueiden manuaalisesta käsittelyyn liittyvästä kurssista. Toivottavasti nähdään sut siellä. Jos tämä herätti mitään kysymyksiä, niin voit olla meihin yhteydessä sähköpostitse info@aplezer.fi ja toivottavasti nähdään kurssilla. Kiitos.